So, welcome to the second episode of our podcast. I think I'm going to have to call it a podcast. This time, we're here with Bernardo Braga. It was very nice to concede me this interview. Bernardo has his own Bitcoin course. It's called Bitcoin 360 or Bitcoin 360 in Portuguese. He also has his YouTube channel and his newsletter Better Money, and he's also part of the excellent podcast Os Intancáveis on Twitter. How are you doing today, Bernardo? Are you doing fine?
Yeah, all good, man. Thanks for the invitation. It's always good an opportunity to practice my English because it's been a while since I last spoke all the time. So yeah, that's great.
All right, good. Yeah, so I'm gonna give you some practice for sure. Man, I like to ask you first about your Bitcoin course, right? Bitcoin 360, because I am about to release my own course about English, right? How was
hmm
the process for you of recording all the classes? I had to redo mine like 3 times. How was it for you?
to be very honest, if you rewind like 6 months ago, I was completely scared of the idea of having my own info product, let's say, so an online course. I didn't like cameras. Like I didn't like the idea of becoming an influencer and producing content and recording like for Instagram or YouTube. This is why if you go back to the very first video, everything text to speech AI generated. Like there's no Bernardo's face there. There's no voice, nothing. So I've been postponing the idea of becoming a public speaker, a public person for a while. But after a long process of like accepting the fact that there is no other way if I want to like fulfill my mission of spreading liberty and self-sovereignty through Bitcoin education. I have to do that. I have to conquer my fear, and I have to go and record the videos. Giving one-on-one consulting and mentorship, like educating individuals on Bitcoin. So taking them by the hand and going from scratch to everything they need to do and understand until self custody and like tutorials on how to install a wallet, configure a wallet, blah blah blah. But that's not scalable. So it's like spending 3 hours a day and not reaching as many people. And I realized, okay, I need to be a man and conquer the fear and go there and record the damn videos and the lessons. And that's how it's going to be. So at first it was very painful. But after, I don't know, after half an hour or maybe an hour of recording, it became less of a big deal. And some of the lessons, I think I was gonna say unfortunately, but I think it's fortunately. Like I had a problem with the software with OBS Studio with the codecs thing. So like all the recordings went to shit, and I had to record everything again. So that was good practice. I have a partner with me who takes care of the video editing on everything on Better Money channel, and he was the one who edited all the classes. Uh, at first, it was very uncomfortable, but it took me like 1 hour, maybe 2 hours to get used to it, and then it wasn't a big deal anymore. So that's in summary, that was it. I
Nice,
don't
yeah.
think you're gonna have any trouble, man. Like it's literally the fact that you have to get acquainted with the software and with the routine of like look at the camera and speaking and then checking yourself talking at the camera and seeing, okay, this is awkward but okay, and then you edit a little bit and it's done. And usually what you're never truly satisfied with it, with the final product. You look at it and you say, oh, this looks like shit, I'm looking awful and I sound like a retard. But then after you show it to people, the audience is like, oh, this is amazing. So yeah, it's always self-judgment is the biggest issue.
Yeah, very well put, man. I definitely feel that. But I like to touch on something. You said you were a little afraid of showing your face. And I remember that on Twitter, you had an OPSEC, right? It was and
Jimosats.
Didi Mossats,
Yeah.
exactly, yes. And you ditched that, right?
hmm
When you mentioned that you were afraid of showing your face, do you only mean like shyness, or do you mean like you were a little afraid because you are involved with this Bitcoin thing and OPSEC is something that is very important for us? What was the kind of fear for you?
No, I think it was mostly self judgment and the fact that you're always you put a very high bar for everything, and like
Hmm.
you're a perfectionist and you demand the highest quality. So I would compare myself to, I don't know, I would look at my video and I would look at Safe Things video or Robert Breedlove, and I was like, okay, this is not the same level, so it's never gonna be good. And then you realize it's a process, right? Like they always, everybody started at some point, and to get better, you need to practice every single day. So yeah, it's basically that, and the fact that I would always feel kind of awkward speaking to a camera, not when I'm on podcasting like this. I'm talking to
Hmm.
an actual person on the other side, then it's very okay. But when it was me in a room by myself talking to a camera, I felt kind of like stupid. But it's also practice. You get used to it. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't ditch the OPSEC because of
Mm.
I wasn't afraid of like being known as a Bitcoiner because of people persecuting me or to try to get my Bitcoin. That's not the issue. That was never the issue. I think if you can do like a multi-sig and distribute your keys geographically, you're safe enough. And like if you're rich enough to the point that people are gonna try to rob you of your Bitcoin, then you can just leave Brazil and go somewhere safer. The issue was that like I didn't want to be seen as a public person and deal with all the consequences of that, because mostly of self judgment. And then I realized there's
Mm.
no way around it. Like if you want to fulfill your mission, you want to spread Bitcoin education or any other kind of message you have to the world, like everybody, if you go in the street, if you hop on a bus, on the subway, if you look around, people are like this the entire day. Everybody's like this. Look, the
Yes.
attention is in here. If you're not in here, you're irrelevant. So basically, that's it. That's the
Yeah.
message.
Very well put. Yes, absolutely. And when you worked on your consultancies and when you were thinking about the classes you were about to make for your course, what was the main issue? Because for me, as an English teacher, I find that the biggest problem for people when they want to start learning English is normally the mentality. You know, they try to speak Portuguese with the English words and it never works out. I try to get them to see the language as what it really is, which is something different. In your course, what is the biggest problem for you in your consultancies as well?
For the clients, you mean?
Yeah.
I think some of the like the boomer generation, the people who are 50 plus, they usually are concerned that Bitcoin is this new technology and it's not going to be for them because it
Mm.
sounds very weird, like you're becoming your own bank. Or what the hell is that? And I'm not going to be able to secure my keys properly. So custodian that deals with it professionally for decades, then trust myself. And then like if you have a proper understanding of what's happening with the world and how broken the money system is, then you have no option other than taking responsibility of self custodying your own money. Otherwise, like you're gonna be fucked at the end of the day. So I think it's always the same issue as well. Like the same way that I would look at myself and say I'm never going to be a good influencer or like a good public speaker. I think these people are just dealing with those kind of fears of self judgment as well. Like I would never be technological or tech savvy enough to be able to handle my own self custody and take care of my keys. I will
Mhm.
mess something up and lose all my wealth or something like that. It's just like irrational fears that you have to deconstruct, I think.
Hmm. Yes, it's interesting, right? How normally the hurdles we have to overcome are normally in our own minds, right? Now they are not
Always,
external ones, right?
always. Have you ever read Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil?
No, I haven't, but I have heard of this book. It's a very famous one.
Yeah, I think it's like 60, 70 years old. And after he died, I think his wife published the book decades later. I don't know. But basically, it's a dialogue between some person and the devil within his head. And the devil this like kind of explains how it works through the human mind to kind of self-sabotage people, and that's pretty much it. Like everybody has a shadow and everybody like it's are constantly thinking positively or negatively, and like you have to be able to not give ears to your inside devil or something like that. Like it's always gonna tell you the story that you're not good enough, you're not prepared enough, that you're not gonna be able to conquer that, blah blah blah, and you have to do it anyway. That's pretty much like our mission in life, I think.
Yeah. And when you look at the guys who have actually made it, you mentioned Saifedean, for example. Like when that guy speaks, he doesn't have a shadow of doubt in his mind, right? He speaks as if he's absolutely certain about everything. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's so successful, right? He doesn't doubt himself when he's going to do stuff.
It's an exercise. I think the same way that you go to the gym every day and you train the muscles and you get muscular and you get stronger and leaner. That's the same with your mind. Like on every single thing that we do, we need to practice to get better. For sure, safety started somewhere, and he was also insecure in some ways. I don't know, like if it's about public speaking or about writing or about teaching economics, but you can bet your ass, like everybody who is very well known and very successful, they all started somewhere and they all had self doubt at some point. So I think uh, kind of a process for everything you do. Like I would, if I subscribe now to an Ultraman, I would probably like not sleep at night because okay, I cannot even run 10K. Like how the fuck am I gonna run 100K or and swim and bike? But after you start practicing and you practice a little bit every day to get better and you get better, like 2 years from now, you're gonna be an Ultraman. You just have to put in the work every single day and be consistent. So yeah.
Absolutely, man. That's what I try to teach my students, man. But some people, they normally think there's some catch. There is a secret. Like, no, it can't be that simple, right? There's something else, isn't there? But there really isn't, right?
I think the reason that people, like, I am married to Ingrid, and she's originally from Bahia, and she grew up in a family who in which nobody spoke English at all. And she's practicing English now. She's not fluent, and she has the same problem. Like she doesn't want to practice at home with me because she's embarrassed by it. And I would bet that if we moved to, I don't know, to Texas right now, and she had no other option to communicate with other human beings other than just using her shitty English, as she says, like English is shitty, I don't want to use it, blah blah blah. If she had no other option, she would get fluent in like 3 months or maybe 6 months. I don't know. Uh, so basically, I'm a very strong advocate of burning your bridges and burning your boats, right? Like you put yourself in a very uncomfortable situation in which you have no other way to survive other than getting shit done. So yeah, that's pretty much how I deal with problems.
Yeah, yeah. That's
I destroy all other alternatives and all other excuses until I have no other plan other than getting stuff done.
Yeah, man, it's a very efficient system, brother. Yes, it's very nice. Discomfort breeds change, right? So yeah, that's
Exactly. Yeah.
very nice, very nice. And I would also like to ask you about your YouTube channel, right? Uh, first, my first question.
Before we say that, I
Oh,
would just
sure.
like to point out that we just talked about burning bridges and boats and having no other option. I think
Ah,
that's happening right now with Bitcoin. Like people who are afraid of learning Bitcoin and taking
hmm.
responsibility over their own wealth, they're not going to have any other option if they want to survive in like 2 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, who knows, other than learning Bitcoin and understanding the problem it solves and understanding how it's the best money ever invented, and basically learning to deal with it and self-custodying their own wealth and becoming their own bank and becoming self-sovereign individuals, because otherwise they're just going to be completely obliterated financially speaking. Like they're going to depend on handouts by the government, and that's not a future you want to have, right? So
That's actually starting to happen here in Brazil, right? Because we see our economic scenario like degrading day after day, right? I was going to say month after month, but it's actually
yeah.
day after day. And you actually talk a lot about that on the Intancáveis podcast, right? And
Yeah.
Normally, of course, in these kinds of podcasts, I understand that we normally talk mainly about the problems, right? Oh, this happened or that happened. This is the clown world and everything. But you personally, do you have like a shadow of a positive outlook for Brazil? Because man, I want to have, but I don't think I do.
I like for Brazil, I don't have a positive outcome for the world for the next couple of years, maybe 5 years, maybe a little bit more. Uh, have you ever read the book The Fourth Turning?
No, I haven't, but I have heard many people talking about that book. So yeah, might as
Yeah, so
well.
basically, the theory that the author says in the book is that humanity, civilization usually goes through some churning, some eras and
Hmm.
cycles, and we're now converging in many multiple cycles that are ending and new cycles are starting. Uh, let's trace a parallel going backwards. I think the last time we were in a fourth turning was World War II. So
Yeah, the
basically,
end
you
of the
have
world.
four turnings, and the fourth one is like doom and gloom and destruction, and people rebuilding everything from scratch. And the fourth turning, basically, as the author says, it started after Lehman Brothers went bankrupt in 2008 because the
Mhm.
system collapsed, and we started having all sorts of hardships economically speaking, and the woke culture and agenda and the globalists and all this kind of shit uh, went on cloud world like 5x velocity. So everything started speeding up and the world started getting weird and weirder. And now I think we're on the verge of collapse, economic collapse, political collapse, and maybe World War III. So I think the world is not going to be a very nice place to live for the next, I don't know how many years, maybe 5 years. I don't think it's going to take that long because, as the famous quote, I don't know who said it first, but w- strong men create good times, good times create weak men create bad times, and bad times create good men, right? So
Yeah.
we're now in the bad times creating good men, I think, phase. So we're reaching peak clown world, and the world is getting very, very, very weird and hard to live in. If it wasn't for Bitcoin, I would be very concerned. I think Brazil is accelerating, like the worsening is getting exponentially faster, and now with
Mhm.
censorship and like X being banned, we're in the middle of a communist dictatorship in the early days. So yeah, I'm not very optimistic, but I would be desperate if it wasn't for Bitcoin. Like I know
Yes.
that my money is with me, and if shit hits the fan, I just need to get my family, go to the airport, hop in a plane, and get the fuck out. Uh, so that's why I'm not like crying in bed every night. But I think that for Brazilians who are like still doing the Bolsonaro versus Lula debate and going to the streets and claiming for change and investing their own money in funds and real estate and stuff
Or
like that,
bonds.
these guys are completely fucked. Like they have no idea. Like they really, really that much fucked, and they need to wake up soon and they need to prepare. Otherwise, like the window of opportunity for them to get out is going to be very, very unlikely they're going to succeed. So you don't have to go far in the past. Like you can look at Venezuela, for example. Maybe
Yeah.
you were like a high class or middle class Venezuelan guy living in Caracas. You had kids and like you had, I don't know, the equivalent to 1 million reais in wealth, but they're all tied in stocks in the Venezuelan exchange or maybe an apartment in Caracas. If you didn't move and get prepared, like maybe your neighbor went to Miami and started again with his wealth, but everybody else who you know and in yourself, basically, they all got fucked. Like they became poor, and depending on government handouts and like I don't know, looking turning the trash cans to find food to survive. I think that's the outlook for people who don't take action right now because Brazil is not going to get any better. I don't trust the elections. I don't trust that we're going to have any kind of democracy or any kind of nothing law and order anytime soon. So it's going to
Mhm.
get much worse before it gets better.
Yeah. So you think we're still on the part where weak men create the hard times, or are we still on the hard times that are creating the strong man?
I think it's not like you don't flip the switch and instantly you go from from weak men creating bad times to the other one. I
Hmm.
think it's kind of a gradual process.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're still getting worse and worse in terms of bad times. But we are now seeing that the future generations, the people who are like 16 years old, 20 years old, you have this horde of libertarians that never existed in Brazil. Like if you take, for example, 2013, 14 with the Dilma nightmare and the protests that were happening here before the World Cup, I think that gave birth to a whole generation of youngsters that studying Austrian economics and became libertarians. Like that's the direct consequence. I think the more communist and the more criminal the government, the more people are gonna lean into like libertarianism and trying to find a solution and fight back and at least take care of their families. So yeah, in other words, I think everything's good for Bitcoin, right? Like it doesn't matter what Shandong does or Lula does, like whoever wants to rob you of your money, you're just gonna have a bigger incentive to study Bitcoin and put your wealth there and maybe get out. And yeah, that's how it's gonna be. Unfortunately, like that's why I couldn't handle the idea of no working full time in creating content and educating people about Bitcoin because let's put it like this. Our great grandfathers or grandfathers or whatever, like in the 40s, they all were youngsters and they all went to war to fight for their values and their beliefs and for their families. And what do we do? Like we sit here in air conditioning, looking at screens, and try to like milk some skill that you have to make some money to live a comfortable life. But if you don't put any meaning in that, like what's the purpose of it all, right? And we have all very comfy lives, and at the same time, we're like the frog that's the proverbial frog in the pan of water that's getting hotter and hotter, and you gotta get boiled. So yeah, if you have an understanding of what's happening in the world, and you're still going to this CLT job, to this multinational, to do some shitty work that you don't care about, and your boss don't care about, just to get some money, to go and get drunk in the weekends, or to travel, or take care of your family, like you're not alive, right? Like let's try to build a better future for our kids, for our grandkids. So that's kind of like my idea on how can I fight the war in my own generation, how useful can I be as a soldier, and that's through Bitcoin education. So I need to get better in creating content and spreading the message to more people, because if I reach, I don't know how many people can get liberated because of my course or my some video that I put out on YouTube, and they watch it and it clicks for them. But if I save one of them, it's all worth it.
Yeah, I
Better
think
than
the
working your
same.
own life, your whole life as a banker and making millions and doing nothing for the world.
Man, I think the same way. I posted a video the other day about a very interesting book I read, the Karamazov brothers, and there was one guy that commented on the video, "Oh, I bought this book because of you. You know, if I can help this one guy to be a little smarter, you know, that is all
Exactly.
I want." And Bitcoin, I really also see Bitcoin as like the silver lining for the many clouds that are above our heads right now. And you mentioned that there are new generations coming up that are very libertarian, and it crossed my mind to ask you about. You said that people who are rooting for politicians, they are doing something that is not going to be very fruitful. But what do you think about Javier Milei in Argentina or Nayib Bukele on El Salvador? Do you think something of those guys?
I mean, I I stand on the fence because I always want to trust that they are gonna save the world, but at the end of the day, salvation is like every person for themselves. Like you need
Yeah.
to take care of your own life, and you have to become a sovereign individual the best you can, the best way you can, and not rely on any government or any politician to do the work for you. But yeah, like it's always good news if you have a Bukele and they like are fighting the globalist movement and they're fighting censorship and they're putting criminals in jail and the population is happier. Now you see the U.S. election with Trump being the most pro Bitcoin person ever. I don't know if that's going to play out as people expect or not. I don't care. Everything's good for Bitcoin, as I said. Some people say that Milei is a WEF puppet. Some people say that he's a true libertarian. I don't know. I don't live in Argentina. I want to
Right.
believe that he's well intended and he's in fact a libertarian and he's going to spread freedom in Argentina for for I don't know for how would I put it? For selfish purposes, because Argentina is right next door. So if Brazil becomes like
Yeah.
a new Venezuela, we can just go to Foz do Iguaçu and cross the border and go and then become an Argentinian citizen. But also because of the world, like you want to have a better world for your kids to live in, and if more Malays do a proper job in spreading freedom and fighting this movement that seems very well coordinated and is fucking up lives in the US, in Europe, in Brazil. So yeah, that's always great. But do not put all your chips there. Do not bet, go all in on some politician, no matter how sexy his speech is.
Yes, never trust a politician. But like you said, I want to believe, because I hear Milei and Bukele speaking, and they say exactly what I want to hear. And I guess that's why, like, I'm kind of, how can I say, careful around them, because we have been tricked and deceived so many times before, right?
I mean, especially if you're Brazilian, like we were very, very hopeful that Bolsonaro was gonna save the country,
Oh,
and then he kind of like got completely fucked by the system. I don't think he's like Renato 38 always says that he was malintended and he did it on purpose. I don't think. I think he's very, very stupid,
yeah.
and it
I
doesn't
don't know
matter
which
at
is
the end of the
worse.
day. Like, yeah, because he betrayed the trust of the people, and now people are in this very worse situation than they were before Bolsonaro. So yeah, don't rely on some savior to come and save the day for you. Like you have to do the work by yourself. Especially if you're a man, you have to take care of your kids, your wife, and your family, and do not be unprepared for the worst possible outcomes.
And there is something, right? Because if you want to prepare, uh, only buying Bitcoin, of course, it's already a great step, but it's not enough, right? Because like you're gonna have trouble helping your family, for example, if you're not physically fit, for example. So you gotta.
Exactly. So I always I talk a lot about this, which is if you want to become a sovereign individual, there are a lot of steps that you need to take. It's very unlikely that you're gonna go from like a complete you're starting nowhere and you have zero Bitcoin and you're fat and you're not healthy and you're lazy and you don't make a lot of money and you have only one passport and you trust politicians. You're not going to become a sovereign individual next week or in 6 months. Like it takes a lot of work. Maybe it takes 10 years or so of very hard work consistently and discipline. uh, but you can take steps, and I think the very first step that's not negotiable is Bitcoin. Like you have
Yeah.
to have some of your wealth set up aside on money that nobody can confiscate, nobody can dilute. So that's the first step, because you can be the strongest man alive, you can have millions and millions of reais or dollars or whatever. uh, if some judge can sign a paper and steal it all away from you, you're irrelevant, right? And you're not going to be able to fight the state. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. You're not going to be able to fly elsewhere. Like you're just going to be fucked, and there's no other way. So taking care of your money is the first step. But after you do that, after you have Bitcoin self custody, you need to take care of other things. Like you need a second passport, because if your country starts I don't know, closing the borders or decides that your passport should be confiscated because you put out a tweet that the judge doesn't agree with or whatever, you need to be smart and not be relying on this individual institution or jurisdiction more properly. So I think the five flag theory is very important. To kind of distribute the stakes in multiple jurisdictions. Also take care of your health. Like you need to be at least healthy, because if you're like fat and you don't have breath to run, or you can't defend your own family or your territory, you're kind of useless in a stressful scenario. What else? What else? There's a lot. There's a lot of steps you need to take in order to become gradually more sovereign. But it all starts with Bitcoin for sure.
Yeah. I put a lot of emphasis on physical fitness as well, because if the future happens to be bright as well, you want to be able to enjoy all that Bitcoin you have saved, right? So,
Mhm.
and if you're fat and sick, you're not gonna be able to do that, right? So,
True. True.
nice, man. And I also want to ask you about your YouTube channel, about the Better Money podcast with all your guests and everything. Man, how
Hmm.
do you feel when you are recording those videos? Was recording the video as like frightening as starting to record the course, or were those separate things for you?
No, as I said, I think when I'm talking to another human, it's very natural. Like it
Hmm.
doesn't bother me at all. Like I can stand in front of a stage in front of like 500 people. If I'm alone, me and the mic, and talking to them, then it becomes weird. Like it's not weird anymore at this point, but it was weird at some point. But if I'm interacting with another individual, if I join, like there's 5,000 people in the audience, but I'm in a panel with multiple people, we're just having a conversation, that's very natural. So recording the podcast is the same. It's basically like this. We're here, we're interacting with each other.
Yeah.
I don't get constantly reminded that some people, like some guy who I don't know in the other side of the world, might actually watch this and judge me. That's the problem, that your own voices inside your head start judging yourself before, like with the prospect of somebody else judging and not liking the content, and then the voices kind of make it awkward for you. But like interacting with other people and recording podcasts is all very natural, so it's not a problem. But
Nice.
at this point, after some practice, I would also say that it's not a big deal, right? Like if you get used talking to the camera, just looking at the lenses, and maybe you use a teleprompter in the beginning, then you get used to it. It gets very old very quick, so it's not a big deal. You get used to it fast.
Yeah, you mentioned talking in front of people, and one of the things I admire about you, man, is that you always seem to be involved in the Bitcoin community here in Brazil, right? I remember we met in the first Bitcoin beef there was. I think that was in 2022, right? And
Uh-huh.
then ever since you have been showing up on SatsConf, you have participated in a couple of panels. If somebody is listening to all this, listening to us talk about Bitcoin and this new world, and people get excited about it, where can they start so they can be as involved in the community as you?
Well, I think don't go to Twitter, because Twitter is now banned. uh, Unless you're not living in Brazil, maybe your VPN says you're living in Paraguay or whatever. Uh, but Twitter was always a very good space to get acquainted with the people that are more active in the community. If you live in a bigger city like Belo Horizonte, Porto Alegre, Rio, São Paulo, you can always look for a local meetup. Maybe even like mid-sized cities, you have a meetup there with Bitcoiners, and that's always a great place to start as well, to meet people in real life. Uh, but yeah, I think you have to put yourself in situations and places in which other Bitcoiners are going to be there, and they're going to interact with each other, and you make some friends. And if you can, come to SatsConf in November, because it's always the best
Ooh.
opportunity you can in interacting with Bitcoiners. It's joining a conference. Like if you go to a conference, you're gonna be experiencing something very different, because you're in this big environment filled with Bitcoiners. So we all know, like as you become a Bitcoiner, how painful it is to have a conversation with a NPC or somebody with a fiat mindset. Like you have to do small talk, and it's always painful, and you can't wait for it to end. and you're always trying to measure that person and say, okay, maybe I shouldn't talk about this subject with them because they're gonna think it's awkward, but they're gonna think I'm crazy. And with Bitcoiners, you remove all that, right? Like it's all natural, and you have deep conversations, philosophical conversations, and we all come from the same place of speaking the truth and understanding how the world how it is. So there's no better place to be than Bitcoin conferences. Unfortunately, Brazil is not a very active place in terms of conferences, but Lucas did a very good job creating SatsConf, and
Damn
I think
right.
it's now the third edition, 2024, and it's going to be bigger than the previous two. Hopefully, I'm going to be there for sure. I think I'm speaking. I don't know exactly when, but on which stage either. But it's going to be fun for sure. It's going to be fun. And you have all these satellite events, so yeah, it's a good opportunity. If you can come to São Paulo in November, go to SatsConf, and you're going to meet some Bitcoiners. Some of them maybe live in your city, and then you can. If there's not a meetup in your city, you can start one and go from there.
Absolutely, yes, and indeed, the Bitcoin events, they are a breath of fresh air, right? Because we are used to toning ourselves down, right? When we're talking to normal people, right? But then when you are there, you can actually talk about what you really believe, and most of all, you find people who also share the beliefs we have, right? And that's you feel
Bro,
less crazy, I think.
I I would like to have enough money that I don't give a damn, and I just go to every single Bitcoin conference in the world because I can, right? And at this point, I'm not comfortable with doing that because it's a lot of money I would spend every
Yeah.
single year going to conferences. But the time that I spent in 2022 in Bitcoin Miami, uh, so it was some of the best days I can remember in the last couple of years, for sure. I met BTC Manhattan there, and that's what led to Intancaves being born after a couple of months. I remember specifically going to the carnivore dinner by Safety and talking to Giacomo Zucco about maybe the overlords of Fiat being reptilian aliens. And that's the kind of conversation that you would not have like with your neighbor or somebody in the street or even a childhood friend. It's like it's very very weird to remove yourself from all these day-to-day scenarios in which you have to tone the volume of your conversations and what the voices inside your head, and you basically just be 100% yourself because people get it. That's like when you become a Bitcoiner, you become a different breed, and it's very very fulfilling to have all these other people who think alike side by side.
Yeah, we become like pure blood Bitcoiners, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
very nice. A different breed indeed. All right, man. So you said that you're gonna do this when you have enough money to go to all these conferences. But for now, though, what are your next steps? What do you have planning for the near future?
So professionally speaking, now I'm gonna become in the personal side first. I'm gonna become a dad in January, February. My wife is pregnant we're
Oh
first
man,
time parents.
congratulations.
So she's going full on transitioning to the mom mode. She's not talking about anything else anymore. She was basically she the other day she went crazy because the baby's room is not decorated yet, and she was like, "I had enough. This has been 4 months of pregnancy, and I want the room to be ready now." So we stopped everything, and she started finding painters to paint the room and decorate everything. Now she's calmer again. It's been a journey. Everybody says that for the dad, you always like it just clicks when the baby is born, right? When you hold it in your arms, then you become a dad. Otherwise, like before the day before the birth, you still didn't realize what's gonna happen. For the mother, it comes earlier, like because she's going through the process of having a life coming out of her belly and feeling all those things and the hormone swings. So it's been an adventure for sure. I still haven't realized 100% of what's going to happen, but I am already feeling the responsibility increasing. I recently left the job that I was working as a CFO in a startup and decided to to dedicate myself 100% to producing Bitcoin content and creating the course and selling the course and learning about digital marketing and because I think that's very much more aligned with my values of freedom and self sovereignty. Because otherwise, if you have to go to a job and you have to rely on your boss to give you a raise, like then you're not actually free, and like the means in which you can produce some money to be able to take care of your family are limited because it goes through some several filters. They're subjective by other people. And I was like, okay, no, I need to take care of myself and I need to make my own money by creating Bitcoin content and education. So I recorded the course. I did my first official launch in last month in August. It wasn't a huge success, but it was for the first time I did a digital, how would you say, like a launch of a course. It
Mhm.
was okay. It was a good experience, a very intense learning experience. So now I'm assimilating everything, learning more about strategies and digital marketing and copywriting and traffic, blah, blah, blah. So I'm applying everything for maybe in 3 weeks, launching again. And I'm creating also some other uh, additional courses, smaller courses to talk about like privacy techniques to buy without KYC or how to run your node. We have this backlog of content that we need to produce in creating new courses, and that's pretty much it. Like my idea is to this new environment, this new world of becoming a, I wouldn't say an influencer, but like working with digital marketing and creating content, and yeah, that's my new adventure, my new mission. So,
Nice. Being an educator, right?
exactly.
Nice.
And
Yes.
we're very optimistic and bullish with the YouTube channel. I think it has much more potential than just doing what everybody else does on Instagram and like recording short videos. Like it's very important to have more engagement and grow your audience. But yeah, YouTube is better because long form content allows you to go deeper, right? And spread the
Yes.
message with more depth other than just doing random 19-second videos that you cannot do much. Like you cannot educate a person, especially on such a deep content, like such a deep topic as Bitcoin. Like you can do much in 90 seconds.
Absolutely. Yes, that's true. Yeah, it counts for the engagement, right? But I don't think I don't think it attracts the kind of audience that we like, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
And
nice.
I think, as I always say in Intancaves, there's no, like, my biggest ally in growing this business for me is called Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. He's my marketing director because people right now, like you have in marketing, digital marketing, you have the 5 stages of consciousness, right? Like how your audience. Maybe a lot of people are now in the first stage because they are
Yeah,
completely unaware, and Lula is doing his job, and people are going to become aware of their need to learn about Bitcoin very soon, because
he's
otherwise it's
waking
going to
people
be
up.
exactly.
Nice. Yeah, very nice, man. And again, congratulations for the kid. I'm pretty sure he's
Thanks.
gonna grow very happy in a Bitcoin household, man. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna put all your links for your course and for your podcast, for your newsletter, everything here on the description, so everybody watching can go check it out too.
Sounds good.
So, Bernardo, brother, thank you very much for this conversation, man. It has been a real pleasure, and I see you guys next time.
Cheers.